I'm Liam, I'm 28, and my own parents missed my birthday for the third year in a row, only to send me a bill for my brother's yacht party a week later. Before I tell you how a single dollar and a phone call to the bank changed my entire life, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. It arrived on a Tuesday. I remember the sky was gray and threatening rain, the kind of weather that seeps through the window and settles deep in your bones. I was at my desk in my small home office, trying to untangle a stubborn piece of code that was fighting me all morning. My focus was absolute until my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from my dad, Richard. The subject line was just one word, Ethan. My stomach instantly tightened into a familiar knot. An email from my dad, especially one with my brother's name as the subject, usually meant one of two things. Something was broken and needed my technical expertise for free, or they needed money. There was rarely a third option. I clicked it open, a sense of weary resignation already washing over me. There was no greeting, no "Hi, son," or "Hope you're doing well." Just a single, stark sentence. "See attached. We'll split it evenly." Attached was a PDF file. My cursor hovered over it for a second, a strange sense of dread prickling the back of my neck. I clicked. A professional-looking invoice filled my screen, mocking me with its cheerful, sunny branding. Sunset Yacht Charters. The header read in a fancy, looping script. Below it was a meticulously itemized breakdown of charges. 4-hour vessel rental, captain's fee, premium catering package, deluxe sound system. The grand total at the bottom of the page was a staggering $4,400. $4,400. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was an amount that could cover my rent for 3 months. It was for a birthday party. For my younger brother, Ethan, the golden child. My eyes scanned down, and that's when I saw the crudely typed note my dad had added at the bottom of the invoice itself. $2,200 your half. My breath caught in my throat. I physically recoiled from the screen, pushing my chair back an inch. Felt like a joke. A cruel, tasteless joke. I read it again, and then a third time, certain I was misunderstanding. But the numbers didn't change. The demand was clear. A week. It had been exactly 1 week to the day since my 28th birthday. A day I had spent mostly alone. A day that had passed without a single call, text, or even a belated email from him, or my mother, or my sister. And now this, not just a request, a bill, an invoice, delivered with the cold, impersonal expectation of a business transaction. Something inside me, a cord that had been stretched thin and frayed for years, finally snapped. It wasn't a loud, violent explosion. It was a quiet, clean break. In that moment, I didn't feel the hot rush of rage I expected. Instead, I felt a strange, chilling clarity descend upon me. It was the kind of clarity that comes after a high fever breaks. The world suddenly seemed sharp and in focus. I opened my banking app on my phone. My fingers moved with a steady, deliberate calm. I navigated to the transfer page. I entered my dad's account information from memory. I'd certainly used it enough times before. In the amount field, I typed $1. And in the memo field, where you're supposed to write things like, for groceries or rent, I wrote just 4 words, I'm not on board. I hit send. The confirmation screen popped up with its cheerful green checkmark. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Felt like pushing a detonator. I knew there would be no coming back from this. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration. But for the first time in a very long time, I didn't care about the consequences. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked over to the window, watching the first fat drops of rain begin to streak down the glass. The storm was just beginning. And if only I had known then, this invoice, as insulting as it was, wasn't even the worst of it. Not by a long shot. Let's go back a week. To my actual birthday, the big 28. I'm not the kind of guy who needs a huge celebration. I've never been one for big parties or expensive gifts. Honestly, a simple phone call would have been enough. A happy birthday, son, from my dad, or a text from my mom asking how my day was going. That's all I really wanted. Just a small sign that they remembered I existed on the planet they brought me into. I woke up that morning with that familiar knot in my stomach, a tangled mess of hopeful dread. Maybe this year would be different. It was a stupid thought, and I knew it. Hope, when it came to my family, was a dangerous thing. I went through my morning routine, coffee, shower, checking work emails, and sat down to start my day in my home office. My phone was on the desk beside me, screen up. I told myself I wasn't watching it, but my eyes flicked to it every few minutes. Every buzz, every notification light made my heart give a pathetic little jump. It was an email from work about a server update. A notification that my credit card payment was due. A news alert about a storm brewing offshore. By noon, the silence from my family was a physical presence in the room. It was heavy and suffocating. I ate a sad turkey sandwich at my desk, scrolling through my contacts. Mom, Dad, my sister, Chloe. I could call them. I could just pick up the phone, force a cheerful voice and say, "Hey, just calling to see what you guys are up to on my birthday." But the thought of it made my throat feel tight with humiliation. Why should I have to remind my own family that I was born? Felt weak, needy, pathetic. I even typed out a text to my mom. "Hey, how's your day going?" I stared at the words, so simple, so loaded. My thumb hovered over the send button. But I knew what would happen. She'd reply with something generic, and the topic of my birthday would never come up, and I would feel even worse. I deleted the text, letter by letter. That evening, my cousin Tyler, God bless him, came over. Tyler's more like a brother to me than my actual brother has ever been. He showed up with a six-pack of my favorite IPA and a couple of foil-wrapped containers overflowing with carnitas from the best taco truck in town. "Happy birthday, man," he said, pulling me into a solid, friendly hug. 28. You're officially old. Time to start complaining about your back. Tell me about it. I laughed, but the sound felt hollow and foreign in my own ears. We sat in my small backyard as the sun bled across the sky, turning the clouds orange and purple. We ate tacos straight from the containers and drank beer. He was the only family member who had reached out, the only one who remembered. "Heard from your folks?" he asked after a while, his voice carefully casual. He knew the answer. He was just giving me a chance to talk about it. I just shook my head, focusing intently on peeling the wet label off my beer bottle. "Nah, not a word." He sighed, a deep, frustrated sound that I'd heard so many times before when the topic of my family came up. "Man, I don't get them. Seriously. After everything you do for them, you'd think they could manage a damn text message." "It is what it is," I mumbled, a phrase I'd used so often it had lost all meaning. We changed the subject. We talked about work, about sports, about the ridiculous price of lumber. But the unspoken truth of my family's neglect hung in the humid evening air between us. My phone sat on the patio table like a tombstone, dark and silent. A black mirror reflecting the empty space in my life where my parents and siblings were supposed to be. Tyler left around 10. I thanked him for coming, for remembering, for being a good friend. He clapped me on the shoulder and told me to hang in there. As I walked back inside and cleaned up the empty bottles and crumpled foil, the crushing weight of the quiet house crashed down on me. I checked my phone one last time before heading to bed. A final, foolish act of hope. Nothing. Not a single missed call. Not a single text. It was the third year in a row. You'd think the sting would lessen. You'd think I'd be used to it. But it turns out you never really get used to being forgotten. It's a fresh wound every single time. As I lay in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder what fundamental flaw I possessed that made me so invisible, so utterly forgettable to the very people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. After Tyler left, with the house feeling 10 times emptier than before, I found myself doing something I knew was a terrible idea. I opened Instagram. It's a modern form of self-torture, I guess. You know you're only going to see curated happiness that will make you feel worse about your own reality. But you can't stop your thumb from scrolling. I was just mindlessly flicking through stories of people's perfect dinners and vacation photos, a thumb-flickering zombie, when a new post popped up at the top of my feed. It was from my sister, Chloe. The photo was a blast of bright, aggressive cheerfulness. It showed my mom, Helen, my sister Chloe, and our Aunt Patricia, all clinking oversized wine glasses together. They were on a beautiful, sun-drenched patio overlooking rows and rows of grapevines. My mom was wearing a new, flowing sundress I didn't recognize. My sister had that perfectly practiced, influencer-style smile on her face, head tilted just so. In the background, you could see the rolling green hills of wine country. The location tag was a sharp, painful jab, Napa Valley Spa and Resort. My blood went cold. I felt it drain from my face. My hand, holding the phone, started to tremble slightly. I zoomed in on the date and time of the post. 2 hours ago. It was posted while I was sitting in my own backyard with Tyler, nursing a lukewarm beer and a broken heart. While I was staring at my silent phone, hoping for a simple happy birthday. They were on a full-blown vacation, a spa trip, a girl's getaway. Then my eyes fell on the caption. It was written in Chloe's typical bubbly, exclamation point-laden style. An absolutely perfect day with my favorite ladies. Sun Wineglass, so blessed to have a mom who's also my best friend. We all needed this little getaway to relax and recharge after a stressful few weeks. Hashtag family time, hashtag making memories, hashtag Napa Valley, hashtag girls trip, family time. The words on the screen seemed to mock me. I was family, wasn't I? Or was family time an exclusive club, and my membership had been revoked without my knowledge? The phrase making memories felt especially cruel. They were making memories, all right? Memories that pointedly and painfully did not include me. With a sense of dread, I clicked on my mom's profile. She had reposted the same picture. Her caption somehow was even worse. Nothing in the world is better than a day of pampering with my beautiful girls. Feeling so much love and gratitude today. Feeling so much love today. Today. My 28th birthday. I locked my phone and threw it onto the couch cushions. My hands were shaking, and I clenched them into fists. It wasn't just that they forgot. That was a familiar, dull ache. This was different. This was active, public, and profoundly cruel. They hadn't just forgotten. They had actively chosen to be somewhere else, doing something luxurious, and then broadcasting their joy to the world as if it were the most normal thing to do. As if my feelings, my existence on that particular day, were completely irrelevant. I sank onto the sofa, the silence of my apartment roaring in my ears. I thought about the times I had put my own needs, my own desires, my own life on hold for them. The late nights I'd spent fixing their computers. The weekends I'd given up to help my dad with some pointless project around their house. The constant, unspoken expectation that I would always be there, the reliable one, the fixer, the safety net. And this was my reward. To be erased. To be so insignificant that they could go on a spa vacation on my birthday and not feel a single pang of guilt. Not a single moment of, hey, maybe we should call Liam. That's when the profound sadness I'd been carrying all day started to curdle into something else. Something harder, sharper, and much, much hotter. Something that felt a lot like rage. A seed of rebellion was planted in that moment, watered by their careless cruelty and fertilized by years of neglect. I just didn't know it yet. Staring at the blank TV screen in my living room, my mind began to play a highlight reel of the last 10 years. But it wasn't a reel of birthdays or holidays. It was a reel of transactions, a long, scrolling list of debits from my bank account that represented the true, unspoken contract of my relationship with my family. It started small, right after I landed my first decent job as a software engineer. I was so proud of that first real salary. I felt like an adult. My sister Chloe's car insurance was due, and she called me, her voice thick with crocodile tears. She was a little short this month, after buying tickets to a music festival. Could I help her out? Just this once? Of course. I was the big brother. I sent her the money. She never mentioned it again, let alone paid me back. A few months later, my dad got his hours cut at work for a couple of months. My mom called, her voice a symphony of manufactured worry. She spoke in hushed tones about how they might not make the mortgage payment, how they were losing sleep. She never directly asked for money. She was too clever for that. She just painted a picture of impending doom. I fell for it completely. I set up a recurring monthly transfer to their account to help them get back on their feet. The hours were restored, my dad even got a raise, but the transfers never stopped. It was just expected. It became part of their budget. Then came the services, the slow creep of digital dependency. Liam, you're so good with all this tech stuff. My mom would say, her voice dripping with false admiration. Could you just add us to your Netflix account? It's so confusing to set up. Soon it wasn't just Netflix. It was Hulu, HBO Max, Amazon Prime. I was paying for a premium family entertainment package for a family that rarely entertained the idea of spending actual time with me. The biggest, most colossally foolish mistake was the credit card. About 2 years ago, my mom had called in a full-blown panic. Her car had broken down on the highway, the repair bill was a monster, and she didn't know what to do. In a moment of pure emotional weakness, I added her and my dad as authorized users to one of my high-limit credit cards. For emergencies only, I had said, my voice firm, emphasizing the words. They had agreed, showering me with praise. You're a lifesaver, Liam. The most responsible person we know. We'll only use it if it's a real crisis. I thought about my brother, Ethan. He was 4 years younger, and I couldn't remember a single time he had to worry about a bill in his entire life. His first car was a graduation gift from our parents. He had a fully funded college fund, a concept that was as foreign to me as a trip to the moon. I had paid for my own college education with a patchwork of academic scholarships, grueling student loans that I was still paying off, and 2 part-time jobs that left me exhausted. While I was flipping burgers and coding for extra cash, Ethan's biggest concern was which spring break trip to go on. He coasted through life on a wave of parental support, while I was the one constantly paddling, plugging the leaks in the family ship. I wasn't a son or a brother. I was a utility. I was the family ATM, the family IT department, the family emergency fund. And what happens when you pay your utility bill every month? You stop thinking about it. You just expect the lights to stay on. You only notice it when it's gone. That night, after seeing the calculated cruelty of that Instagram post, I finally understood. My value to them wasn't emotional. It was purely functional. They didn't love me. They loved what I provided. They loved the convenience, the financial cushion, the peace of mind that came from knowing good old, reliable Liam would always be there to pick up the pieces. And as I sat there in the dark, the anger began to solidify into a cold, hard, and unshakable decision. A utility can be turned off. An ATM can be emptied. A financial leash can be cut. The question wasn't if I should do it anymore. The only question left was how and when. The invoice that would arrive in my inbox a week later wasn't the cause of the fire. It was just the gallon of gasoline poured on a blaze that had been smoldering for a decade. The morning after I sent the $1 transfer, I woke up before my alarm, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The cold clarity from the day before was still there, sharp and focused. I made my coffee, sat down at my desk as the sun was rising, and got to work. This wasn't about revenge. I told myself that over and over. This was a reclamation. This was about taking back my own life one account at a time. First on the list were the streaming services. It was the easiest, the least confrontational. I logged into my Netflix account. Under the settings menu, I found the option I was looking for, sign out of all devices. I clicked it without a moment's hesitation. A small pop-up asked, "Are you sure? This will require everyone to sign in again." I clicked yes with a grim satisfaction. One down. Next was Hulu. Same process. Then HBO Max, Amazon Prime. It was a systematic digital eviction. With each click, I felt a small weight lift from my shoulders. I pictured my sister, Chloe, finishing her morning yoga class, getting ready to binge-watch her favorite vapid reality show, and being met with a stark, impersonal login screen. I pictured my parents settling onto the couch after dinner, ready for their British crime drama, only to be met with a password prompt they didn't know and couldn't guess. Then I moved on to the more serious matter, the credit card. The emergencies only card. I logged into my online banking portal. My eyes scanned the list of recent transactions, and the familiar churn of anger and betrayal started in my stomach. There was a $45 charge from Postmates for Chloe from 3 days ago. Apparently, a late-night craving for gourmet sushi was now a life-or-death emergency. There was a $150 charge at a ridiculously expensive organic grocery store near my parents' house from last week. I guess artisanal cheese and gluten-free crackers now qualified as a crisis. And then I scrolled further back, my heart pounding in my chest with a sick sense of dread. I stopped on a charge from a month ago, one I had somehow missed before. Napa Valley Spa and Resort, $350. It was a deposit. They had been planning their little birthday getaway for weeks. Planning it all the while using my card for their everyday luxuries, knowing full well my birthday was coming up. The fury that had been a slow burn was now a raging inferno. This wasn't just negligence or selfishness. This was a deep, profound, and calculated disrespect. It was theft, cloaked in the guise of family entitlement. I picked up my phone, my hand steady, and called the number on the back of the card. When the automated system answered, I said the 2 words that would end it all: cancel card. After a brief hold, a human operator with a calm voice came on the line. I explained that I wanted to close the account completely. May I ask the reason for the closure, sir? She asked politely. Compromised, I said, the word tasting like bile in my mouth. The account has been compromised by the authorized users. I want them removed, and I want the card shut down. Immediately, there was a flurry of typing on her end. I can see the authorized users are a Helen and a Richard, she said. I can certainly remove them for you right now, sir. You don't have to close the entire account. Closing a long-standing account can have a negative impact on your credit score. Close it, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. I'll deal with the credit score. I want the account closed. I will pay off the remaining balance myself today. But I want that line of credit terminated for good. Very well, sir. More typing. The account is now closed. No further charges will be approved. Thank you, I said, and hung up. The final chord was the phone plan. I was the primary account holder on a family plan with 4 lines. I logged into the phone provider's website. It took a few minutes to navigate the deliberately confusing interface, but I found what I was looking for. I initiated a transfer of service for my line only, converting it to a new, individual plan under my name. The other 3 lines, my mom's, my dad's, and Chloe's, were now unattached to my name and my bank account. They would be suspended within 24 hours if someone didn't take over the billing responsibility. I leaned back in my chair. The digital surgery was complete. I had methodically and cleanly severed every financial tie. The house was quiet, but in my mind, I could already hear the distant, rising crescendo of their screams. It was only a matter of time. It took less than 6 hours for the fallout to begin. The first shot was a text from Chloe, arriving just after lunch. Hey, Netflix is being weird. Is the password still the same? It's not working on the TV. I read the message, took a deep breath, and deleted it without replying. An hour later, another one arrived. Seriously, Liam, Mom and Dad are having trouble with it too. Did you change it? I want to watch the new season of that baking show. Just text me the new password. The sheer entitlement of it was staggering. The assumption that I was her personal tech support. I deleted the message. The silence from me must have been unnerving, because the tone of the messages began to shift. The next one, a couple of hours later, was from my mom. Liam, your sister says the TV isn't working, and my credit card was just declined at the pharmacy. I was so embarrassed. Is something wrong with the account? Please call me. I stared at the words, my credit card. The way she said it, as if it was her own hard-earned line of credit. It was never her card. It was my card with her name printed on the plastic. Privilege, not a right. I deleted the message. By evening, the quiet concern had morphed into full-blown panic. A group text from my dad appeared. Liam, what is going on? None of the phones are working except on Wi-Fi. The card is shut off. The TV is broken. This isn't funny. Call me. Now. I put my phone on silent, grabbed my gym bag, and left. I needed the physical release. I put on my headphones, cranked up the music until it drowned out the world, and worked out until my muscles burned and my mind was blissfully empty. When I got back to my car an hour and a half later, I had a dozen missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic voicemails. I didn't listen to a single one. The next morning, I woke up to a new level of escalation. An email from my mom with the subject line, "Urgent, please read." It was a long, rambling screed about how they felt abandoned, how they were worried something had happened to me, and how I was being cruel and immature. It was a masterclass in emotional manipulation, full of phrases like, "After all we've done for you," and "We're your family. This is what family does for each other." I read the whole thing, feeling nothing but a profound sense of detachment, as if I were reading about someone else's life. I archived it without replying. I thought that was the worst of it. I was so wrong. The real bombshell dropped around 3 p.m. that afternoon. My phone rang with an unknown number. Usually, I'd ignore it, assuming it was spam, but for some reason, a gut feeling told me to answer. "Hello, may I speak with Liam?" A professional, no-nonsense female voice asked. "This is he. My name is Amanda, and I'm calling from the Fraud Prevention Department at your bank. I'm calling regarding your credit card account, the one ending in 4528. My blood ran cold. "Okay," I said slowly. "I closed that account yesterday." "Yes, sir, we're aware of that," she said. "The reason for my call is that the account was flagged this morning. A report was filed by a Mr. Richard and a Mrs. Helen, stating that the card had been stolen and that recent charges, including the payoff of the final balance, were fraudulent." I went completely still, the phone pressed hard against my ear. I couldn't process the words. My own parents. They hadn't just gotten angry. They hadn't just thrown a tantrum. They had reported me for fraud. They had accused their own son of a felony to the bank that held my mortgage. A laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and brittle and full of disbelief. "Sir?" Amanda asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I'm sorry," I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I'm laughing because it is so utterly absurd. Amanda, Richard, and Helen are my parents. They were authorized users on my account, which I owned and paid for. They were upset that I removed them and closed the account. So, it seems they decided to report the card as stolen to try and punish me. This is a family dispute, not criminal fraud. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the gentle, rhythmic click of a keyboard. "I see," she said, her tone shifting slightly, becoming more understanding. "The report stated that they had no knowledge of the account closure and suspected you were a victim of identity theft." "That's a lie," I said calmly. "I have text messages and emails from them from the past 24 hours, panicking after they realized they couldn't use the card or their phones anymore. They knew. They were just trying to regain control." More typing. "Thank you for clarifying this, Mr. Liam. We will note the account with this information. The fraud claim is officially dismissed. I do apologize for the inconvenience this must have caused you." "It's not your fault, Amanda," I said, my voice weary. "Thank you for calling me directly." I hung up the phone and stared out the window for a long time. This was a declaration of war. They weren't just angry about the money. They were willing to destroy my life, my reputation, my financial standing, all to maintain their comfortable lifestyle. The line had been crossed. And now, I knew this was no longer about setting boundaries. This was about survival. After the catastrophic failure of the fraud allegation, I expected a period of grudging silence. Maybe they'd finally retreat, realizing they had gone too far. Instead, they just changed tactics. When direct financial and legal attacks failed, they turned to the weapon my mother wielded with surgical precision: psychological warfare. They started a smear campaign. It began subtly, a series of ripples spreading through the wider family pond. The first was a Facebook message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in at least 5 years named Carol. Her profile picture was a blurry selfie with a golden retriever. "Hey man, heard you're having a tough time with your folks. Just remember they're your parents. They love you no matter what. I knew immediately what was happening. My mother was working the phones, her voice trembling with manufactured grief, crafting a masterful narrative where she was the heartbroken victim. In her version of the story, I was the unstable, ungrateful son who had suddenly, and for no discernible reason, turned on his loving, supportive family. Then came the call from my old friend, Mark. We'd known each other since high school. We'd been through a lot together. I thought foolishly that he was on my side. "Dude, what the hell is going on?" he asked, his voice laced with that weird, condescending tone of someone who thinks they have the full story. "I just got off the phone with your mom. She's a complete wreck, crying her eyes out. She said you just cut them all off out of the blue, won't even answer your phone." "That's not what happened, Mark," I said, my voice tight with a mixture of anger and disappointment. "It's a lot more complicated than that." "Complicated? Liam," she said, "all they did was ask for a little help with Ethan's birthday party, and you just exploded. It sounds like you're seriously overreacting, man. You know how much they do for you." The word, overreacting, hit me like a physical blow. I had been gaslit and emotionally manipulated by my family for years, but hearing that same invalidating language from someone I considered a friend was a new kind of pain. This was a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. It showed me just how effective my mother's campaign was. "She told you that?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did she also tell you they forgot my birthday for the third straight year while they were on a spa vacation in Napa? Did she tell you they sent me a $2,200 invoice? Or did she happen to mention the part where they reported me to the bank for felony fraud? Did that come up in your little chat?" There was a stunned pause on the other end of the line. "Well, no," Mark mumbled, already backpedaling. "She just said you were under a lot of stress at work and that she was worried about you." "Yeah, well, thanks for the concern," I said, my voice dripping with ice. "I've got it handled." I hung up before he could respond. I immediately blocked his number. The circle of people I could trust was shrinking by the hour, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I felt profoundly isolated, like I was on a tiny island and the tide was rising, and everyone I knew was on the shore watching. Just as I was starting to truly doubt myself, to wonder if maybe I was the monster in this story, my phone rang. The caller ID said, "Uncle James, my dad's brother." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the ignore button, then answered. "Liam," he said, his voice calm and steady. It was a voice that didn't tolerate nonsense. "It's James. I'm not calling to tell you what to do. I'm calling to listen." The relief that washed over me was so immediate and so powerful it almost brought me to tears. Finally, someone who wasn't calling to judge. I told him everything. The whole sordid story. The birthday, the invoice, the Instagram post, the canceled cards, the fraud call, Mark's betrayal. I laid it all out, a torrent of words and frustration, expecting him to tell me I should try to make peace for the sake of the family. He was silent for a long moment after I finished, letting the weight of the story settle. "Well, son," he finally said, his voice rumbling with a quiet anger on my behalf. "It sounds to me like you've finally drawn a line they should have seen coming 10 years ago. Your father, he's a good man in some ways, but he's always been willfully blind to what your mother does to people. And your mother, she's a professional victim. She could get an Olympic gold medal in it." He continued, his words a balm on my frayed nerves. "Listen to me, Liam. You did nothing wrong. You have every right to protect your own peace and your own finances. A friend of mine went through a nasty divorce a few years back, and the first thing his lawyer told him was that family can make you do things no stranger ever could. They use love and obligation as weapons. Don't let them." He then confirmed my suspicions. "Your mother has been telling everyone that you're unstable because you're angry about some imagined inheritance from your grandparents, that you're trying to punish them financially. It's a complete fabrication, but some people are buying it." The absurdity of the inheritance lie was almost comical. There was no great family fortune to fight over. It was just another lie, another brushstroke in the portrait she was painting of me as a greedy, unhinged villain. They're painting a picture, and you're not in control of the brush. Uncle James said, his voice firm. So stop trying to fix their painting. Just walk away and start your own. His words were a lifeline. He wasn't just offering support, he was offering validation. He saw the truth. He confirmed that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the bad guy. That night, armed with a renewed sense of purpose, I started digging. I went back to the credit card statements, the ones I had downloaded before I closed the account. I looked at the charge for the spa deposit again. And then I noticed something else on the detailed monthly statement, something I had overlooked in my initial rage. A section called Rewards Activity. My heart started to pound as I clicked to expand it. I scrolled down the list of points earned and redeemed. And then I saw it. A redemption from 4 weeks ago. The exact amount needed to purchase a Vineyard Spa Day package for 3. The description was right there in black and white. They hadn't just gone on a spa trip on my birthday. They hadn't just paid for the deposit with my credit card. They had paid for the entire thing using my reward points. The points I had earned from years of responsible spending and paying my bills on time. They had stolen the very rewards of my hard work to fund their day of leisure while I sat at home, alone, feeling forgotten and worthless. I saved the statement as a PDF, my hands trembling slightly. This was it. This was the one thing they couldn't twist or deny or gaslight their way out of. I now had the proof. I had the truth. And I knew with absolute certainty that I would soon have the opportunity to use it. The invitation, as I knew it would, came a few days later. It wasn't a direct invitation to me, of course. My mother was too clever for that. She used a proxy. My Aunt Lisa, Uncle James's wife, called me. "Liam, honey," she started, her voice strained and apologetic. "I'm so sorry to even ask you this. Your mother has organized a family dinner here at our house this Saturday. She says she wants to clear the air and fix things before this goes any further." I could hear the skepticism, the sheer exhaustion, in my aunt's voice. "She cornered me at the grocery store," Lisa admitted with a heavy sigh. "It was either I agree to host this, or she was going to make a very public scene in the middle of the dairy aisle. James, and I want you to know you absolutely do not have to come. There is no pressure from us. But we also want you to know that if you do come, you will not be walking into an ambush. We'll have your back." "I'll be there," I said immediately. The time for hiding and avoiding was over. This wasn't their house. This wasn't their arena. This was neutral ground. And I was coming prepared. The night of the dinner, I walked into my uncle's house feeling strangely, unnervingly calm. I had a single piece of paper folded neatly in the inside pocket of my jacket. It felt as heavy as a stone, a tangible weight of truth. My parents and Chloe were already there, sitting on the living room sofa like a tribunal, a united front of indignation. My mom had her concerned, heartbroken parent face on, a look of practiced sadness. My dad looked stoic and angry, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Chloe just looked bored and annoyed, scrolling through her phone, as if this was all a massive inconvenience that was keeping her from her real life. A few other relatives were scattered around the room, collateral damage in this family war. I saw my cousin Carol, the one who had messaged me, and she refused to meet my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the pattern on the rug. My mom, Helen, stood up as soon as she saw me, a perfect performance of maternal relief. "Liam, oh thank goodness you came. We've been so worried sick about you." She moved to hug me, her arms outstretched, ready to play the part of the forgiving mother for the audience. I took a small, deliberate step back. Her arms fell awkwardly to her sides, the rejection hanging in the air. We all sat down. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. My mom, ever the director of this drama, started, her voice trembling just enough to signal her victimhood. "Liam, we don't understand what's happened," she began, her gaze sweeping across the other relatives, ensuring they were all paying attention. "You've always been such a good, responsible boy. To just cut us off like this, with no explanation, has broken our hearts. It's broken this family." I let her speak. I sat there, my hands resting calmly on my knees, and I listened. I listened as she wove a masterful tale of a loving family blindsided by a moody, unstable, and ungrateful son. She talked about how they had always supported me, how they had sacrificed for me. She conveniently left out every single critical detail of the past month. The forgotten birthday, the invoice, the fraud claim. It was a masterwork of fiction. And all we did, she said, her voice cracking as she went for the emotional crescendo, was ask for a little help for your brother's celebration. We thought you'd be happy for him. We never imagined you would react with such anger. I let the silence hang in the air after she finished her performance. I looked around the room, at the confused and judgmental faces that were staring at me. Then I looked directly at my mother. You're right, I said, my voice quiet but carrying clearly through the silent room. You did ask for help. A week after you, Dad, and Chloe forgot my birthday for the third year in a row. A ripple of uneasy murmurs went through the room. A few people shifted in their seats. My dad's jaw tightened. We were busy, Chloe snapped, looking up from her phone with a glare. We had that trip planned. God, you're so dramatic. Ah yes, the trip, I said, nodding slowly as if I were just now remembering. The spa trip to Napa. I saw the pictures on Instagram. It looked lovely, very relaxing. My mom jumped in, sensing she was losing control of the narrative. It was a last-minute thing, a special deal we just couldn't pass up. We were going to celebrate your birthday with you when we got back. You know that. A last-minute thing? I asked, my voice still deceptively calm. I reached into my jacket pocket and slowly, deliberately, pulled out the folded piece of paper. That's funny, because I have a credit card statement right here showing a deposit for that last-minute trip was made over a month ago. I placed the paper on the coffee table in the center of the room. My dad's eyes darted towards it, a flicker of panic in them. You're invading our privacy, Chloe screeched, her voice rising in pitch. You have no right to look at that. Your privacy? I shot back, my voice finally rising, edged with steel. Was it invading your privacy when you used my emergency credit card to buy sushi from Postmates? Was it invading your privacy when you used it for your weekly organic groceries? Or was it just invading your privacy when I finally decided I was done paying for it all? My dad finally spoke, his voice a low, threatening growl. You watch your tone, Liam. We are your parents. And you reported your son for a felony? I said, looking him dead in the eye, refusing to back down. You called my bank and claimed I stole the card to try and ruin my financial standing. Because you were angry that the ATM was closed. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My cousin Carol's jaw was literally hanging open. My Aunt Lisa gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. My mom started to cry, the real tears of someone who has been caught. We were scared. We didn't know what was happening. We thought someone had stolen your identity. We were trying to protect you. It was the most pathetic, desperate lie I had ever heard. And it was time to end it. Please, Mom. Stop, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion now. The lies have to stop. They're over. I picked up the statement from the table. You want to talk about stealing? Let's talk about this. You told everyone this trip was a special deal. A getaway you paid for. But you left out the most important detail, didn't you? I held up the paper so everyone could see. This is the reward summary from my credit card account. And right here, redeemed 4 weeks ago, is a payment of 230,000 points. The transaction description reads, Napa Vineyard Spa Day Package for 3. You didn't just go on a trip on my birthday. You didn't just use my card for the deposit. You paid for your entire luxurious getaway with my reward points. The points I earned through years of responsible spending. You stole from me to fund your vacation, and you did it on the one day a year that was supposed to be about me. I placed the paper back on the table. Silence. Absolute, deafening, and complete silence. My mom's fake tears had dried up instantly. Her face was a mask of pure, stunned shock. She looked like she had been slapped. My dad looked like he had been physically struck, his face pale and slack, his eyes wide with horror and shame. Chloe stared at the paper as if it were a venomous snake. My Uncle James just nodded slowly, a grim, sad look of vindication on his face. The power in the room had shifted completely. There were no more lies to hide behind. There was no more he said, she said. There was only the ugly, undeniable truth, printed out in black and white for the whole family to see. That was the moment everything changed. The moment the truth finally came out and I took back control of my own life. Thank you for staying with me this far, you're amazing. If you could, please like this video and comment with the number 1 down below, just so I know you made it here with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experience means something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest reason I have the strength to share the rest of this journey. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like an eternity, thick and heavy with shame. No one knew what to say. The carefully constructed narrative my mother had spent weeks building had just been demolished by a single piece of paper. The other relatives, the jury in this makeshift family court, just stared, their expressions a mixture of shock and pity. And for the first time in my life, that pity was directed at me, not at my mother's crocodile tears. Uncle James, ever the pragmatist, was the one who finally broke the silence. He stood up, his large frame seeming to fill the room. "Well," he said, clearing his throat loudly, "I think this dinner is over. Thank you all for coming." It was a clear, unequivocal dismissal. People started to gather their things in a clumsy, awkward hurry, avoiding eye contact with my parents as if their shame were contagious. They murmured hasty goodbyes and practically fled the house. They were radioactive and no one wanted to be caught in the fallout. I stood up to leave as well, my mission accomplished. But my dad's voice, hoarse and weak, stopped me. "Liam, wait." I turned, my hand on the doorknob. My parents and Chloe were still sitting on the couch, looking small and defeated under the warm living room lights. The relatives had all gone. It was just us and my aunt and uncle, who stood silently by the door, a protective, silent presence. "What is it you want?" I asked, my voice flat and tired. I was drained. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only a vast, empty exhaustion. It was my dad who spoke. My mom was still too stunned, staring into the middle distance. We can fix this," he stammered, his eyes pleading. "It was a mistake. A terrible misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I repeated, the word sounding foreign and absurd. "You misunderstood that you were using my money every single day? You misunderstood that you were cashing in my reward points? You misunderstood that it was my birthday? Which part exactly was the misunderstanding?" "Your mother was stressed," he tried, falling back on the old, tired excuse. "We've had a lot of financial pressure lately and—" "So you decided to report me for felony fraud?" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Was that part of the stress relief package? Trying to give your son a criminal record because you were feeling a little pressure?" He had no answer for that. He just looked down at his hands, a man completely stripped of his authority and his excuses. My mom finally found her voice, but it wasn't the voice of apology. It was the voice of a desperate negotiator trying to salvage a deal. "Liam, we can fix this. We can put you back on the phone plan. I'll pay you back for the points. We can go back to how things were. Go back to how things were." The phrase chilled me to the bone. To them, how things were was a state of perfection. It was a system that worked flawlessly in their favor, where their needs were always met, their comfort was always assured, and their bills were always paid, all on my dime. They didn't see the toxicity, the disrespect, the profound emotional neglect. They just saw a comfortable arrangement that had been disrupted, and they wanted it back. They didn't miss me, the person. They missed the services I provided. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it filled the room with its finality. "We can never go back. And even if we could, I would never want to." I looked at each of them one last time. My sister, Chloe, who was now glaring at me with pure, undiluted hatred. She wasn't ashamed. She was furious that her free ride was over. My dad, who just looked broken, a man forced to confront the truth of his own weakness and moral failure. And my mom, whose mind was probably already spinning, trying to find a new angle, a new way to manipulate the situation, a new narrative to spin for the relatives who had just walked out. "This is it," I said, my voice gaining strength. "It's over. The accounts are closed. The financial ties are severed. I am done. I am done being your safety net, your ATM, and your emotional punching bag." Chloe scoffed, a bitter, ugly sound. "So what, you're never going to speak to your own family again? Over a little bit of money?" "It was never about the money, Chloe," I said, looking right at her, wanting her to understand this one simple truth. "Not really. It was about respect. And you, none of you, have ever shown me a shred of it. The money was just how you kept score." I turned to my aunt and uncle. "Thank you for this," I said sincerely, "for giving me a safe place to speak the truth." They both just nodded, their eyes full of a sad understanding. I walked to the door. I didn't look back. I could feel their eyes on me, 3 pairs of eyes that had watched me grow up but had never truly seen me for who I was. I stepped out into the cool night air and pulled the door shut behind me. The solid, definitive click of the latch was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a lock turning on a prison cell, but I was on the outside. It was the sound of me finally, irrevocably, being free. I got in my car, and for the first time in my entire adult life, I drove away from them without any intention of ever coming back. The 6 months that followed that final, explosive confrontation were a blur of radical, terrifying, and ultimately liberating change. 2 weeks after the dinner at my uncle's house, I packed up my apartment. I sold what I couldn't fit in a truck, gave the rest to charity, and with my remaining possessions, I drove 8 hours north to a new city where I knew exactly one person. A friend from college who graciously let me crash on his couch for a week while I apartment hunted. I didn't tell my family I was leaving. I just disappeared. I got a new phone number, deleted my old social media accounts, and effectively vanished from the life I had known. It felt extreme, even to me, but I knew it was necessary. Clean break. A true fresh start where I wasn't Liam the family ATM, or Liam the reliable fixer, but just Liam. The new city was vibrant and anonymous. I found a small but clean 1-bedroom apartment downtown, a fraction of the size of my old place, but it was all mine. The rent was my only major expense. There were no hidden costs, no surprise bills, no financial burdens that weren't my own creation. I landed a job at a smaller tech company, one that was more innovative and less corporate than my last. The work was more challenging, the team was collaborative, and my new boss, a guy in his 50s named Mr. Harrison, was a straight shooter who valued results over office politics. He judged me on my code, not on my family connections. For the first time, my salary felt like it was actually my own. I wasn't mentally portioning it off before it even hit my bank account. This slice for my parents' bills, this chunk for Chloe's car insurance, this reserve for whatever emergency would inevitably pop up. I started building a real savings account. I opened an investment portfolio. One Saturday, I spent the entire day shopping for a new couch, and when it was delivered, I felt a ridiculous, monumental sense of achievement. I had bought it. For me, the freedom was intoxicating. It was also terrifying at first. The silence was the hardest part. I was so conditioned to the constant low-grade hum of my family's drama that its absence felt like a missing limb. But slowly, I started to fill that silence with new things, new sounds, new people. I joined a hiking club and spent my weekends exploring the mountains outside the city. I started going to trivia nights at a local pub, and after a few awkward weeks, found a regular team. I reconnected with old friends from college who lived in the city. One afternoon, about 3 months in, I was at work when an email landed in my inbox. It had been forwarded by the general company contact address. My mother, somehow, had tracked down my new place of employment. The subject line was, "Thinking of you." My finger hovered over the delete button, my heart starting to race, but morbid curiosity won. I opened it. It was short, just a few lines. "Hello, Liam. It's been a while. I hope you are doing well. We think of you often and we want you to know that we love you, and we forgive you. Love, Mom." "We forgive you." I read the line 3 times, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stealing my breath. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no hint of remorse. Just an offer of forgiveness for sins I had not committed. It was one final, desperate attempt at manipulation, a way to reframe the entire history of our relationship so that I was the transgressor and she was the benevolent, long-suffering matriarch. 5 years ago, that email would have destroyed me. It would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. But now, I felt nothing. It was like reading a message from a complete stranger who had the wrong email address. She had no power over me anymore. That version of me, the one who lived and died by their approval, was gone. He had been left behind in another city, in another life. I dragged the email to the trash icon on my screen and then emptied the trash for good measure. A few weeks later, Mr. Harrison called me into his office to praise a project I had led. He mentioned a significant raise to my salary and a potential promotion to a team lead position by the end of the year. I walked out of his office with a smile on my face. The man reading that email, the man building a new life, was free, and he was finally, truly starting to thrive. Just when I thought I had closed that chapter of my life for good, another ghost from the past slipped through the cracks. It was another email forwarded through the company system, this time from an address I didn't recognize. But the sender's name was Richard, my father. My first instinct, my conditioned reflex, was to delete it unopened. Just like my mother's. It was poison and I had spent months detoxing. But something stopped me. His approach had always been different from hers. He was blunt, often cruel, but he wasn't a natural, insidious manipulator like she was. Against my better judgment, I clicked it open. The email was different. The tone wasn't angry or demanding. It wasn't manipulative. It was quiet, resigned, felt heavy. "Liam," it began. "I don't know if you'll even read this. Your mother got your work address from somewhere. I'm not sure how. I'm not writing to ask you to come home. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few months, since that night at James's house. A lot of sleepless nights. When you put that piece of paper on the table, it was like a light turned on in a room I didn't even know was dark. For the first time, I saw everything clearly. I saw what James had been trying to tell me for years. I saw what I had refused to see. It wasn't just about the trip, was it? It was about everything. For years, your mother and we used you. There's no other word for it. You were the responsible one, you were the successful one, and it was just easier to let you handle things. It was easier to see you as a solution to our problems than as our son. I let my pride and my financial stress blind me to what was right. When you pushed back, I didn't see a man at his breaking point. I saw a system that was failing. I saw an asset that was malfunctioning. Reporting the card. That was my idea. Your mother was panicking, and in my arrogance, I thought I could scare you. I thought I could force you back into line. It was the worst, most shameful thing I have ever done, and I will be ashamed of it for the rest of my life. I know this doesn't change anything. I know an apology doesn't fix years of neglect. It doesn't give you back the birthdays we missed or the respect you always deserved. But I needed to say it. Maybe not for you, but for me. I needed to admit in writing that I was wrong. We all were. We failed you as a family. Miserably. I hope you've found some peace where you are. You've earned it, Dad. I must have read that email 10 times, the words blurring and sharpening on the screen. It was the closest thing to a real, heartfelt apology I had ever received from him, or from any of them. The words were simple, but they held a weight of truth and self-awareness that my mother's manipulative messages could never possess. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of the old Liam surfaced. The little boy who just wanted his dad's approval, who just wanted to hear him say, "I'm proud of you." A part of me, a small, wounded part, wanted to write back, to say thank you for finally seeing it, to open a door that had been slammed shut and bolted. But I knew I couldn't. An apology, even a sincere one, doesn't erase the scars. It's a bandage on a wound that needed stitches years ago. It was a step, yes, but it was a step taken far too late on a road I was no longer traveling. I realized I could accept his apology without having to accept him back into my life. The two were not mutually inclusive. It was a quiet, bittersweet moment of closure. It was a sad acknowledgement of what could have been, and a firm confirmation of the path I now had to walk alone. I closed the email. I didn't delete it this time. I saved it in a folder named Archive, a final, complicated postscript to a story that was now finally over. It was proof that I hadn't imagined the injustice. And it was the final permission I needed from myself to truly and completely move on. A full year after I moved, Tyler made the 8-hour drive up to visit me for a weekend. We were sitting on the small balcony of my apartment, which overlooked a bustling street, drinking a couple of beers as the city lights began to twinkle on below us. It was a cool, clear evening. "This is nice, man," he said, taking a sip and leaning back in his chair. "You seem different. You look lighter somehow. Calmer." "I feel calmer," I admitted, and it was the honest truth. It's insane how much of my mental energy I was spending every single day just bracing for the next thing. The next demand, the next guilt trip, the next passive-aggressive text. Now it's just quiet. My life is quiet. He nodded, looking out at the skyline. "I still hear things, through the family grapevine. It's unavoidable at holidays." I didn't ask for details, but he offered them anyway. "Your mom tells everyone who will listen that you had some sort of mental breakdown and cruelly abandoned the family. Your dad doesn't say much at all, just gets this sad look on his face. And Chloe complains a lot about her new phone bill and the cost of car insurance." I couldn't help but laugh. It was a real, genuine, deep belly laugh. Of course she does. Some things never change. We were quiet for a minute, just enjoying the comfortable silence that only exists between true friends. Tyler said, turning to look at me, his expression suddenly serious. "The craziest part is listening to them talk about it. They keep saying they lost you. They talk about it like you were a set of car keys they misplaced, and they're just so confused about where you could have gone." He shook his head, a look of profound insight on his face. "But they never really had you. Not the real you. They just had your access. They had access to your bank account, access to your streaming services, access to your credit line, access to your unwavering sense of duty. The moment you revoked that access, they acted like you ceased to exist." His words hit me with the force of a simple, undeniable revelation. He was right. All this time, I had been mourning the loss of a family I thought I had, a family I desperately wanted. But I hadn't lost them. You can't lose something you never truly had. I had just lost the heavy, suffocating burden of pretending. I thought about the cost of this new life, the painful severing of ties, the lonely nights, the difficult and sometimes scary process of rebuilding myself from the ground up. But sitting here on my own balcony, in my own apartment, in a city that I chose, next to a friend who saw me for who I was, I knew it was worth it. Freedom isn't free. It has a cost, but it's worth every single penny. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It's been a long and difficult journey, but sharing it makes it feel a little more meaningful. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace? I'd be honored to read your story in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.